Welcome to a spine-chilling journey of mystery and terror. Meet Norah, a young girl haunted by eerie dreams and a dark family secret. As she uncovers the truth about her past, she faces unimaginable horrors. Prepare yourself for the haunted past of Norah, a chilling tale of family secrets and curses. Will you dare to watch until the end? Like and subscribe before we start our story. Norah was a lovely, dark-skinned girl with a head full of large curls. She was always cheerful and had many friends. She was adopted by a loving, traditional Dutch couple, and according to the report she saw on her 15th birthday, her biological parents had passed away. Norah's parents were travelers who roamed the world. During one of their many journeys, they fell in love with the beautiful Paramaribo and frequently ventured into the interior. They temporarily stayed with an old tribe in the forest, where they were warmly received and formed a bond with the inhabitants, including Norah's then pregnant biological mother, who was 8 months along. She was very ill, and no one knew what was wrong with her. She grew weaker by the day. On the day of her delivery, she was too weak and passed away shortly after Norah was born. Norah's father couldn't handle it and committed suicide when Norah was just 3 weeks old. This tragic story was shared by her adoptive parents when she turned 15. Norah often had dreams she didn't understand, causing her many problems. She frequently woke up in a sweat, calling for her mother. This had been going on for years, and doctors were baffled. The years flew by, and our Norah blossomed into a beautiful young woman. 3 days before her 18th birthday, she became extremely ill with a high fever and stopped eating and drinking. Her parents panicked and called 112. Norah was taken to the hospital, where numerous tests were conducted, but nothing was found. Despite the good care, she only got sicker. The doctors were at a loss. Norah fell into a coma, and her parents, who stayed by her side day and night, looked at each other in worry. That evening, her parents sat at the table, but Julia, Norah's adoptive mother, couldn't eat a bite. "You know it, Jan. You know it," she whispered with tears in her eyes. "We said we'd never talk about it again." Jan snapped at his wife. "No, Jan," continued the extremely sad woman. "This is too much. You and I know it's—" Jan frowned and said, "You and your nonsense." He got up angrily and stormed upstairs to the bedroom. Julia quickly followed him, shouting, "Jan, it's all your fault, your fault." She collapsed on the top step, crying. After a while, Jan came to the stairs and picked up his wife. They were both very upset. "Jan, we have to talk about it. Norah's life is at stake." "Then it's not kidnapping anymore. It's murder," she screamed. "Shh," Jan hushed. "The walls have ears, Julia. I agreed to this. Someone else had to suffer because we couldn't have children." Jan grabbed his wife tightly, shaking her. They both jumped when they heard the phone ring. Julia's hands were sweaty, and it felt like an eternity before she reached the phone. She answered with a fearful voice. "Hello? Good evening. Can you come to the hospital immediately? Your daughter has awoken from her coma." "You see, Julia," Jan said joyfully, "it's all going to be okay. You just panicked too quickly." They drove to the hospital as fast as they could. "Norah, Norah, Norah," Julia cried, holding the girl's hands tightly. "Mama," said the girl softly. "Why, Mama, why?" "What do you mean, Norah?" the mother asked fearfully. "I've seen everything, Mom. I've seen everything." The nurse signaled to the worried couple that it was enough for now. Norah was still confused and needed rest. They walked down the corridor, and Julia asked her husband, "What does she mean, Jan?" Jan said, "Oh, don't worry about it. She was in a coma, so it makes sense she's talking nonsense." That night, Julia couldn't sleep. It felt like ants were crawling all over her body. She scratched and tossed around. Jan woke up and stroked her sweaty head. "Everything will be okay," he whispered hoarsely. In his heart, he was worried, but he didn't want both of them to panic, so he stayed calm. The next day, the doctor said that Norah would need to stay in the hospital for more tests and suggested she talk to someone. That night, the nurse heard a deep man's voice from Norah's room, but when she checked, she saw Norah sleeping peacefully. "I must have imagined it," she muttered and went back to her station. Norah's parents arrived early at the hospital, bringing gifts. She had missed her 18th birthday, and they wanted to make it up to her. "Thank you, Majori," Norah said. Her mother was so shocked, she almost fell off her chair. What did you say, Norah? How did you call me?" "Majori," Norah repeated. "I can't take this anymore," Julia cried. "What's happening to my daughter?" Jan's look spoke volumes. "What are you saying now?" Julia shouted. "Is this more of your nonsense, Jan?" "It's over, Jan. I don't know how, but she knows things. You and I both know that was my nickname in the village. We never told Norah that. How can she know?" "Think about it," Julia said. "In the meantime, I'll wait in the car." Jan returned to Norah's room and cautiously asked her why she called her mother that name. "Dad, all those dreams I've had all my life, the man with the spear and the white stuff on his face, the man I've always been so afraid of. I was with him, Dad, and he told me everything." Jan's eyes widened and reddened. "What do you mean, Norah?" he stuttered. "It's enough, Dad. All the lies and deceit. It's enough. As soon as I can leave the hospital, I'm going to my birthplace for more answers." "No, Norah," Jan shouted in shock. "It's dangerous. There are wild animals, poisonous frogs and snakes, and the people there. You don't know them." "Yes, Father, I don't know them. Because of you." Norah turned away, and no matter what her father asked, she didn't respond. John walked dejectedly to the car, tears streaming down his face. "Julia, I don't know how, but I think she knows." Julia lost her temper, started the car, and drove off wildly. "Calm down," Jan shouted. They got home quickly, and Julia ran inside. Jan followed, shouting, "Julia, if we panic now, we'll lose our daughter. Don't you see? We've already lost her. We never really had her. It was all your plan to steal her. You laughed when the village shaman cursed us. You didn't care that Norah's mother got so sick she died, or that her father was never found after he fled into the forest in distress. You still believe the story we told Norah is true. We both know it's a big lie. We're cursed, and we were supposed to lose her around her 18th birthday. Is that more of your nonsense, Jan? These are the facts. Yes, Julia, you can blame me all you want. It was my idea, but you didn't stop me, you selfish witch." The argument got out of hand, and John slept on the couch from that day on. The day came for Norah to go home. Her parents agreed that Norah shouldn't know about their argument. Norah came home, but she was no longer the girl she was before all this happened. She was a completely different person. For days, her mother tried to talk to her, but she was unresponsive. Her friends also noticed the change in Norah. No one could understand her. She didn't say much, and when she did, she only wanted to talk about her trip to Paramaribo. Her parents argued more and more, and eventually decided to separate, but not before talking to Norah. That evening, the tension was high. They sat there, unable to say a word. Suddenly, Norah started talking, and her parents watched her intently. "Mom, Dad, I want to forgive you for everything you've done to me. Only then can the curse be lifted." How do you know about the curse?" Julia stammered. "The man in my dream told me everything. I know the true story. You took me from my mother and she died of grief. What about my father? Where is he? Never found. He's still alive somewhere in the dark, but he's still there. I'm going to find my father." "No, Norah, it's not true. It's all a dream. Weren't we good parents? Didn't we make you happy?" Julia cried. "I don't have much to say, Majori. Do you have money for a ticket? If not, I'll quit school and work to save up for it." Determined, Norah left the room, leaving her parents devastated. "What should we do, Jan?" Julia asked with a trembling voice. "We must give her the money, Jan. We have no choice." "Over my dead body!" Jan shouted. "I'm not sending my daughter into the jungle alone. It's been 18 years. Why can't she let it go?" John cried in despair. They both turned when they heard Norah's voice. 18 years, Dad. Let it go. What are you so afraid of?" "Yes, you raised me, and I love you both for that. But I must find my own roots. Do you know what it's like not knowing your own identity?" The time passed, and finally Norah was on the plane to Suriname. The last thing she heard her father shout was, "Norah, don't forget us." She ignored it and closed her eyes, imagining meeting her people. It was a tiring and exciting journey. Norah, in her traditional attire, sat next to an elderly lady who had just come from the interior. They connected and started a conversation. Norah shared her story, and the lady said she would take her to her village. The village was in the same place her parents had mentioned in the story. Everything was just as they described. Norah stood in amazement, admiring the simplicity and beauty of the village. She met an old man who looked strikingly like her, holding a spear and wearing traditional attire with white paint on his face. They stared at each other for a long time. Tears streamed down Norah's face. The man dropped the spear, and they ran into each other's arms, crying. "Daddy! Daddy!" Norah cried. "Daddy, is it really you?" "Yes, my daughter, it's me. I've waited 18 years for this moment. You're just as beautiful as your mother." They hugged each other tightly and shared a deep connection, understanding the pain and loss they had endured. Norah felt a sense of belonging she had never known. Norah asked her father what happened and why she was adopted when he told her the truth about Jan and Julie. "They poisoned your mother and thought that they killed me. That's how they got away with you, because they couldn't have children of their own. They searched for a village in the forest to steal a child. Luckily, our eldest knew a curse, so when they left, he cursed them. And we knew that one day you would come back to us." Months passed, and Norah's adoptive parents received a letter from her. In it, she forgave them completely and thanked them for raising her. She wrote about the happiness she had found and her decision to stay with her biological father and her people. But she assured them they would always be a part of her heart. Norah found peace in her new life. She embraced both her past and present, knowing she was loved by both her families.